the tools necessary for the artist to succeed. We wanted to be able to, give our employees decent paychecks. I thought our intentions were noble, but the way that we went about fulfilling them was ill-informed.
If you go back to the 1995, would you do it again?
Well, there. I think that there were a lot of really hard lessons that I had learned. I think, the Warner organization, well, all the record labels are much different. The larger record labels are different than they were back then. I don't know, the music industry is so different now than it was then. It's kind of hard to be able to take those steps back and review what was a good deal and what was not. To the extent that we're still standing, I think says a lot about our corporate partner, favorably. When things started to roll for us, they got out of our way, which is not always an easy thing for a larger corporate partner to do. So, from that standpoint, it's been favorable.
Have I understood correctly that actually you are not only alive, you are doing better than ever, meaning that, for example, the past 3 years, all of them have been profitable, which is a great result.
Yeah, out of 20 years of business, 4 years have been profitable. The last 3 being.
What has happened? Have you changed something? Have you been lucky, or whatever? How would you define the success of the
Definitely lucky. It's the trick to doing business is being able to make more money than you spend. So we just adhered to the principles that Bruce and I had believed in early on, and then we had luck in terms of the audience for this music, finding it appealing, and people buying download CDs, vinyl. I mean, it's really that simple. It wasn't like we suddenly figured out what we were doing. I still don't really know what I'm doing.
But when we go through the new bands which you have at the moment, which are like Fleet Foxes, CSS, Flight of the Conchords, Postal Service, Death Vessel, and so on and so on, what are you looking for when you are signing new bands? Is there some common denominator?
For all of us who are involved, for one thing, my signature goes on all of the contracts, but I long ago gave up doing most of the A&R at Sub Pop, and we have some people who are, huge, very dedicated and passionate fans of music at the label. And the thing that's most important if you're running a music company, it may sound incredibly obvious, but I swear to you it's not adhered to, this tidbit of advice, which is to really, really love music. There are a lot of people in the music industry who I think enter the music industry with a love for music, but whose love for music falls by the wayside due to any number of reasons. But I think to the degree that we have success is because we follow our instincts based on loving the music that we put out.
Have you ever signed a band which you don't love?
Oh yes. And every single time it's ended up being a disaster.
But is there one thing which you are looking for? Is it something? Are you looking for a sort of like long career? Are you looking for something that this might end up something great or whatever? Do they have to be ready? Do they have to be somehow special? Is there something which you can mention that this is the thing which I'm looking for?
They need to rock and roll all night and party every day with me.
You also have some great bands outside US, for example, CSS from Brazil or Lonely Deer from Sweden, and so on and so on. How do you operate outside US? Are you monitoring areas? Do you have people working overseas? How do you operate?
We have 2 tiers of distribution. We work with the Warner system from time to time, and then otherwise we have a network of distributors throughout the world that we work with on a regular basis. And the Sub Pop records, we don't ever Well, from time to time, we will license things out. In the case of Fleet Foxes, they were signed to Sub Pop for the world outside of Europe, and then concurrently, at the same time, they were signed to Bella Union, a great label based in the UK, for Europe. So that wasn't a licensing situation. Pardon me. In the case of CSS, we actually licensed the record to a label in Japan, but otherwise kept it for the rest of the world. So, I mean, we have different models, but for the most part, a Sub Pop record will come out on Sub Pop through our distribution channels throughout the world.
How do you take care of the day-to-day AR and so on with bands coming from Brazil and Sweden, for example?
Well, they usually take care of their business, and then we have a international department at Sub Pop, Gabe and Carly. Carly does international marketing and Gabe does international distribution, and then the managers or the band themselves will talk to them on a daily, weekly, however many times they need to talk to them basis, and then the business is just undertaken that way.
So far you haven't been having any Finnish bands. Have you been close to signing some of the Finnish bands? Have you been listening to Finnish music?
I'm not familiar enough with Finnish music. There is a band Circle, I'm sure you're all familiar with. There's a gentleman who does our direct-to-retail, or Sub Pop retail direct service. A gentleman named Dean Whitmore is a huge Circle fan, so he has advocated, you know, it's a band that puts out a lot of music, and so we've listened to a lot of Circle music. But I'm sure there are many, many great bands that I just simply haven't heard of, and part of the reason I'm here is that I want to hear some of them.
Bring it on. What would be your tip for the Finnish bands? Would it be sort of like in Finland, go abroad, or whatever? How do you see the international aspect of the music? Or how?
Well, I think that artists need to do what feels comfortable for them. I think, you know, if music is great, I mean, it's very intuitive. If you want to have your music heard by the rest of the world, you need to get out to the rest of the world somehow. If, however, you know, your music being heard by other people is just something that is, you know, not a major concern to you, that you're going to make the music anyway, and you're going to just put it out there and see what happens, you should live comfortably and live happily, and whichever way makes you, you know, be able to have those qualities in your life.
Which takes us naturally to the next topic, which is the future of music industry. If you would be setting up a band, or if sort of like if you would be consulting a good band which are starting their career, would you recommend them to do a deal with Sub Pop, or for example release their own CD?
Well, if they were a good band, I'd recommend them doing a deal with Sub Pop. If they sucked, I'd say do it all yourself. No, I mean, it really, again, it depends on what a band is trying to achieve. The thing that record labels offer artists is access. You know, we have, because, you know, in an earlier conversation that you and I had mentioned, you know, getting on late night television in the United States requires having somebody in your corner who has, you know, relationship with the talent buyers on those programs. I don't think those programs by themselves necessarily sell records, but they add to, you know, cascading momentum, which eventually will optimally lead to selling records. And so that's just a case where, you know, a record label can provide marketing muscle and access that you may not be able to do yourself. But again, you know, in a world with, you know, YouTube and so many different, you know, opportunities for self-promotion, you know, the reliance on a label to generate marketing opportunities may itself be an obsolete notion.